More than 5 billion people around the world continue to struggle with money and financial illiteracy.
It's Madison Avenue manipulation, right? It's been going on for years and we buy into it.
How bad is financial illiteracy?
It's not taught in schools, so people don't know this naturally.
You're right.
So you grow up not knowing anything about it. You make a lot of mistakes along the way, and we're hoping to educate them and teach them how money really works so they can learn the cause and effect of all this.
And it doesn't have to be generational.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly right.
Break that cycle.
Once you understand the basics of financial literacy, it changes your life.
The secret is financial literacy. I mean, teaching your kids how money works.
I think it's really understanding how money works.
Once they understand the basics of how money works, they shouldn't have to struggle for very long.
Steve Siebold and Tom Matthews are the authors of How Money Works. Stop being a sucker.
Money means possibility. It means opportunity. It means freedom. Things you've always wanted to do, dreams that you have. Money makes it possible.
You know, of all the interviews we've had in the last 6 weeks, I'm actually most encouraged by that.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Kemp. I'll be your host this evening to teach on the Elements class that we have. We've been doing a series of these based on our groundbreaking book, How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker. And this is one of the best-selling books out there on Amazon right now. You could pick up a copy if you don't have one already. Someone probably who invited you on here tonight could get one in your hands. One of the reasons it's so popular, two reasons, I think. One is it's a super easy read. I see my 10-year-old daughter picking it up and reading it. That's a good sign that it's simple, okay? And I think that financial books have kind of missed something that, around the simplicity and how important that is. And, you know, and also it just recognizes a simple truth that that we just don't know how money works as a culture. And it's a global problem. It's an economic crisis around the world, and the United States is no different. I think we rank 14th in the world in financial literacy, and ironically 14th in happiness as well. And so this book, I think within an hour, if you read it, and that's about how long it took me a little longer because I'm a slow reader. I've read it many times, but I think it's financial literacy in about an hour. You know, probably more than 95% of most Americans out there in just about an hour. And, you know, I think that's very important for people to start with education, and then be able to fill in all these classes that we're doing, and where we take a little bit of deeper dive in these bite-sized chunks. Today, we're going to be talking about short-term, what to do with your short-term money, essentially strategies around emergency fund, debt management, how to possibly increase cash flow. And this is really, I think, you know, what to do right now to get your financial house in order, how to have more peace and confidence in the present around money, and really put yourself in a position to build wealth. You know, I think something we all have in common is one day we all want to wake up in the morning one day and say to ourselves, well, I don't have to work today. Today is a want to day. I could work if I choose to, if I want to be relevant in people's lives, but I don't have to do it because of money. And just kind of like that work optional, want to, not a have to life. I think most people want that. They just want a degree of freedom. And, you know, I know, and I don't want to really, this is a good maybe place to talk about what's happened in the last year and how people's lives have been turned upside down around their money, and particularly in this next category, which is building an emergency fund. With the pandemic, you know, people have lost their jobs. They've lost loved ones. It's been a human tragedy, without a doubt. Over 500,000 lives lost, and so I don't want to overstep how much of a tragedy this last year was. At the same time, with every crisis, there's also an opportunity, and in a couple ways that, you know, our lives have been made in some ways easier to to do some of these short-term money strategies of building an emergency fund. For example, we've had an opportunity to spend less money in the last 12 months or so, right? Because we haven't been able to get out and do anything. So I say an opportunity. Of course, we could all be on our Amazon accounts and ordering up a storm. I guess we could still spend money, but the things we, going out and seeing a show or eating out or vacationing, the things that really can cost us a lot of money, we've had an opportunity not to do those things, I guess, in the last 12 months. So that's maybe been a good way to stockpile some emergency fund money. But also, the very aggressive response of the Federal Reserve to reduce interest rates to about 0% has given us the ability to refinance some of our higher interest debts. The stimulus, if you're making under a certain amount, you may have been able to be a benefactor of getting a couple stimulus checks, which also could go a long way. If you haven't lost your job and you got a stimulus check, that's kind of a bonus for you. So really, emergency fund is what separates us from financial disaster. And it's something that has to be done one bite at a time, just like eating an elephant. 3 to 6 months of liquid money in a safe, secure place is always what's recommended. Certainly, if once you get to 6 months, there's probably better things you could do with your money and have it working for you more, right, than just sitting in a real safe place. But the number one rule is only use it when you have an emergency, and that's it. And if you do need it for emergency, if there's an emergency comes up, definitely use the money, but replenish it. Make sure you can use that as your barrier from you and financial security, making sure you're still secure, and that keeps us from getting into debt. And debt is one of the biggest crises that we face. I think that it's probably one of the biggest stay awake issues most Americans have out there. The average amount of debt is it's huge out there. It's almost $30,000 of consumer debt. And I just remember in college at U of I in Champaign, walking down the quad one day, minding my own business. My first kind of brush with financial institutions that really want us to build a habit of being in debt. And I was walking on a quad and I was thirsty. And there was a table with a bunch of people with 2-liter bottles of soda that seemed like, wow, this is like a place to go get something to drink. So I went over there and I went and I said, okay, well, how do I get one of these bottles of pop? And they said, well, I just have to fill out this credit card application. And I said, okay. And I was like, well, yeah, you don't have to get the credit card or anything, but just fill it out and I'll give you a bottle of pop. I was like, okay, whatever. So I was thirsty. I did it. 2 weeks later, I get a $6,000 credit card in my mail in my dorm room. I remember this. And wow, I didn't have a hard time spending all that money and getting into a bunch of debt. So moral of the story is, and I'm glad I learned that lesson at a young age, but financial institutions, and I'm not here to villainize banks. Many of us have homes because of a bank, but their bank's job is not to make you rich. The bank's job is to loan money. And if you can have a habit of paying off a debt, even if it's a small one, and just keep on paying it every month, and you're paying a debt constantly, you just be when you make more money, you'll have a bigger habit of paying bigger amounts of debt. And so that's kind of the trap that many people find themselves in. And I mentioned about $30,000 of personal debt is the average. That may have come down a little bit because we've been getting so much stimulus money. But it's still just, it's one of the biggest causes of anxiety, which is not a good thing. Stress is a killer from last time I heard. So here's some strategies and tips about eliminating and getting out of debt if that's an issue. And if you're not in debt and you're fine in this area, just take mental notes so you can maybe help other people as well who are going through some of this difficult stuff here. Number one, and I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail, but know what you owe. Don't make any more late payments. If you're in a hole, the best advice is stop digging, right? Target one debt at a time, and stop charging, right? And if you can, if you're in a position to refinance your house, especially now with interest rates as low as they are. So knowing what you owe is just knowing you're taking a snapshot at taking inventory really of where you're at. You know, you can't, if you wanted to, you know, put coordinates into your GPS and your phone to find out how to get to a location, if your phone can't find you because it doesn't have a signal, it's just going to keep spinning and spinning and spinning. It's not going to be able to tell you directions because it doesn't know where to give you directions from. So it's very similar to not knowing what our debt is. I sit down with clients all the time, and they have credit cards here and there, and they really don't know how much they owe. And if they do, they have no idea what their interest is. You got to know the interest, the monthly payment, all the details of what you owe, and then cross-check that. Go to your annualcreditreport.com. You can get your free reports there from the major TransUnion, Experian, Equifax. Look for the word dispute. If you see something in there that is that you don't agree with or you don't think you owe, that's a good way to cross-check with what you think you owe. And there's some things in there, maybe they're old or they're not accurate. Well, you can hit dispute, and then if the creditor can't come back with something that says, hey, you do actually owe this, if they don't do that, then it'll be off your record. So definitely just cross-check with what you think you owe with what the credit credit websites, what they tell you. And then, you know, how do you increase your credit score? Well, don't make any late payments, right? Late payments kill it's one of the biggest things that weighs against your credit score. And certainly getting a lower interest rate is what helps you get out of debt faster. So if you make late payments, those interest rates will be even higher. Set automatic payments in your calendar, or just get your debt paid automatically every month, so you don't have to think about it. It's one of the biggest trip ups is just, oh my gosh, I missed my date where I owe this payment, and then you got a $35 late fee. Set alarms, make sure it's just an automatic. But one of the biggest mistakes I see people making when they're paying off debt is number one, they throw all their money towards every debt that they have in equal proportions. They say, well, I'm paying extra to all these debts, even their mortgage. I mean, they're kind of like using all their financial energy to kind of have it be spread out too much, where it's not really being as efficient or as effective as it could be. And a much, much better strategy is to pay one debt off at a time. And there's two different ways to do that, which I'm not going to get in too much detail on, but there's a debt roll-up strategy, and there's which is called the avalanche strategy, and then there's a snowball strategy. So one is if you start with the lowest balance first and work your way from there. And the other way is if you start with the highest interest rate credit card first. So what do? You start with, in this case, and mathematically, by the way, it does make sense to start with the higher interest rate. But what if you have a bunch of small credit cards that are lower interest rate, but you could pay them off sooner? There's a psychological benefit of paying off a debt. It just gives you a little bit of a I'm on the right track type of feel. And also you're less tripped up by missing payments on too many debts going on. So it's more of a psychological benefit. But let's say you start off with credit card number one, and you say, look, I'm going to start putting I'll put minimum payments towards everything. And in this case, they're just going to go with the small debt, minimum payment towards debt number 2 and 3, and put all my resources financially towards debt number 1. Once that's paid off, I could take my minimum payment from that and move all my financial strength towards credit card number 2. And then finally, all the money I was putting away towards all those other minimum payments are going to go towards credit card number 3. And then your credit cards are the biggest problem, right? Beyond that, of course, student loans, there's other kinds of debts, but student loan debt and even mortgage debt are not nearly as crippling as credit cards because of interest rates, right? How high that is, and just a huge hurdle to overcome. So some other things, stop charging, right? Don't dig a hole if you're already in one. But there's so many different, if you go home through your credit cards, I just did this the other day, and I was like, man, I can't, I'm not even using that old subscription, or it's of course it's the Hulu and it's the Amazon and it's the Netflix and it's all these other things and Showtime's like, honey, when's the last time we've seen a show on Showtime, right? And so you just have to go through every once in a while, make it a habit of just combing through and saying, hey, this is an extra 30, 40, 50 bucks a month that should just be eliminated. And it can go without our notice if we don't pay attention, right? So also, if you can, if you're in a position to, one of the best times in history to refinance your mortgage, if you haven't already. I mean, 4 years ago when I got this house, I didn't think I could ever refinance a 4.25 rate, but I did. And man, it's unbelievable because interest rates are, of course, so low. But if you need to first to get your credit a little bit better, to pay off the credit cards first and then do this, but if you have a good enough credit, this is a great way to get those credit cards paid off even faster. I would just always caution that if you refinance and you pull some cash out refinance to pay off some credit card debt, just keep in mind what got you in that debt in the first place. Because if the habits are still present that are getting you into debt, all you did is refinance your house, put more debt on your house, and then now you have cleaned up credit cards that if you don't have the habit change to not charge them up again, it's not really going to help you out that much, right? So we have to have the habit change of not spending on a credit card or paying it off every single month, no matter what. So a couple things about increasing cash flow here. And certainly increasing cash flow is just the difference between really what your income is and your bills, right? So whatever that extra you have that's above and beyond your bills every month, that's your cash flow. So you could either spend less, that's one way to increase your cash flow, or you could make more. So after you've gotten all these other steps in our money milestone steps taken care of, then cash flow is really an important one to start focusing on. And our character here, George, thought, hey, well, I'm already pretty frugal. What can I do to increase my cash flow? Well, what if he started selling his fire in a whole chili? So, small business ventures may be one way to do it. But just some tips here, just some simple tips that everyone could do is whatever your budget is, have a budget, first of all. And I used to think, and a lot of people think this way, that a budget, it sounds very restrictive. The word budget, it sounds like, it means I can't do something I would ordinarily want to do. And we have to weigh our needs versus our wants. And, when I think about budget though, I've kind of reframed it in my mind where I think about, it makes me feel more free to have a budget because I know I will be able to do the things I want to do by paying attention to the details of things that I would normally not be focused on, or just, be unconsciously perhaps spending money. And so that's weighing what our needs are versus our wants, and then sticking to that. Okay. And just like working out, it's the same thing. It sucks at first. It hurts, you're sore, but after a while it's like, man, I don't even know what I do without working out. All right. It's same thing with sticking to a budget or any habit that we build. Have a written plan. The one thing that I think has really helped me, as well as many of my clients, is if someone has a challenge with identifying where unconscious spending is happening, where money is just kind of flowing out of the bottom of the sieve, which is our bucket, and there's holes in the bottom of the bucket. Well, write down everything you spend money on. Journal. Grab a journal and do it for maybe a week. Try it for a week where you just write down everything you spent that week. And it's hard and tedious, but even if you write, like, bought a pack of gum, you write gum $1.59 or whatever it is, and then you take inventory of really what are you spending money on. So that Starbucks, that normally like a knee-jerk reaction, I see a symbol of Starbucks, I'm going to now turn my hands on the steering wheel and go through the drive-through to get my caramel macchiato. Well, if you are writing that down every single time and it's $6 or $5, $5, right? $5, not Starbucks, you may think twice. So that's a part of having a written plan. Shave spending on car and home insurance. We usually don't like have big claims on our car and our home. So why not just have a higher deductible so we have a lower premium, and then we could take the excess that we're paying towards that premium and save up for a deductible, or just have a beef up our savings and investments. If you reposition your savings, like some people, they have all 6 months of their income of their emergency fund in a bank making 0% interest. Well, or even if they have 3 months, what's the likelihood you're going to carve through all that emergency fund? Probably very little. So what I recommend generally is take maybe about half of it and keep it in the bank, but keep the other half in a place that gives you a chance to make some money, a safe, secure place that's maybe not going to be up and down too much, but over time, with time being a key element, you can have a better return on your emergency fund. If I can make 4 or 5% on my emergency fund and keep it liquid and available to me, I'll do that all day. That makes a lot of sense to me. Of course, you want to have some cash on hand and something for, ATM machine type emergencies, right? And then dropping your PMI, if you're still paying private mortgage insurance, you may own more than 20% of your home, and you're still paying the PMI insurance, which is maybe $100 or $200 a month. You could go ahead and get that taken off of your payment by showing that you own 20% or more of your home. So here's a few big moves as we round third base here to supercharge our cash flow. One is get a side gig, maybe, do something on the side. It's been difficult lately in the last year or so to do things like Uber and stuff like that. But, maybe you have something that you're passionate about, you enjoy doing, that you could do part-time or just on the side. The average gig economy person out there makes about $1,100 a month, doing something outside of their normal career. Some of you may be a little bit more ambitious and maybe you want to start a business of your own. And that's where you start looking at becoming an entrepreneur, maybe starting part-time. I got started in this industry part-time when I was still a student at U of I, and I had a house painting company that I did while I was doing this as a student, and I transitioned full-time. But the business concept versus a gig business, starting up a business has more of a connotation of scalability, being able to build something that can grow with or without your own effort. And there are businesses out there at very low cost to get into. And then also adjusting your W-2 could put more cash back in your pocket with your how many dependents you claim. And some people like getting that big refund every year. I mean, all you did really is loan money to Uncle Sam at 0% interest all year long. So I try and figure out a way to get more cash in my pocket on a monthly basis so I can go ahead and save that and invest that for myself. So let's just take a look at, really what this is building up to. And this is the next class, is more long-term, right? Thinking about how much money does it really take to create an income stream for yourself. And what we've seen is that it takes about 20 times, whatever your income you want in retirement, it takes about 20 times that amount of money sitting out there invested, earning that 5% return per year. And that's 5% drawdown in retirement is probably pretty aggressive. There's a 4% rule out there as well, which means you don't take more than 4% of your assets if you don't want to run out of money. But there are places that do guarantee a 5% drawdown. So just by comparison, if you wanted $10,000 a month in retirement, that's $2.4 million you have to have saved up. So not a small amount of money. And that just means we just have to get the short-term stuff totally handled. So we can really, once we've got that as a foundation, then we can really focus on supercharging our retirement and long-term plan, right? So our mission is to teach 20 million families how money works in the next decade. And so that's where you may come in. Some of you may be clients of ours already, or you're someone who's just brushing up, maybe getting your ducks in a row, or you're someone this is your first time hearing any of this, okay? And so we have 5 classes, this is one of 5 classes. But in the back of the book, if you don't have one yet, we'll make sure to get a copy in your hand. Just ask the person who invited you. In the back of the book, there's a money discovery section, which you kind of just take that snapshot of where you're at right now, identify some of the goals that are important to you in the money milestones that you'll see inside the book, and get back with a person who can actually help you move forward financially on your journey. Probably the person who invited you on tonight, it can either help you themselves or introduce you to someone who can. So the next step is just to review your numbers with the experts. And